They told you Jesus healed the sick, gave sight to the blind, and raised the dead. But they never told you how he prepared for those miracles. Every act of power began not in the daylight, but in the dark. While the world slept, he withdrew into silence, not to rest from exhaustion, but to return to the source. In the stillness before dawn, Jesus entered what the ancients called the second sanctuary, the sacred night. The Essenes, the keepers of forgotten wisdom, believed that sleep was not the absence of consciousness, but the doorway to it. That in surrender, the soul remembers what the mind forgets, that we are already whole. Before he healed the crowds, he aligned with the Father. Before he calmed the storm, he found peace within himself. His power wasn't effort, it was surrender. Because the greatest miracles begin in rest, and the same silence that held him still waits for you. The same spirit that moved through him moves through you. Maybe the miracle you've been praying for has been waiting for you to stop striving and simply rest. You are not separate from the divine. You are the temple, the threshold, the light that never left. If this awakens something inside you, if you feel the pull to remember what was lost, then subscribe now and join us as we uncover the hidden teachings, the mysteries of the night, and the forgotten paths where heaven meets earth. They told you Jesus healed the sick, gave sight to the blind, touched the lepers, and raised the dead with only his voice. But no one ever told you how he prepared for those miracles. Every act of power began long before the crowds gathered, began the night before, in silence, in stillness, in the dark. While others slept, he withdrew to pray, to rest, to enter the heart of his Father. It wasn't ordinary sleep. It was communion. He wasn't escaping the world. He was aligning heaven and earth within himself. Long before electricity chased away the night, the people of God knew that darkness was not something to fear. It was something sacred. In the first-century desert, beneath a sky so thick with stars it looked alive, there lived a small community called the Essenes. They wore white robes, bathed in pure waters, and devoted themselves entirely to scripture and prayer. To them, sleep was more than rest. It was a meeting with God. They believed that when the body sleeps, the soul continues its worship, that every dream is a whisper from the Father, every night a return to Eden. And though the Gospels never mention them by name, traces of their influence linger in Jesus' rhythm of life. When he withdrew from the crowds, when he prayed alone through the night, he was not escaping exhaustion. He was returning to the source. He was practicing what the ancients called sacred rest, where the veil between heaven and earth grows thin and the soul listens without words. Scripture shows this pattern again and again. Before he healed the sick, before he walked upon the sea, before he called Lazarus from the tomb, Jesus withdrew into the night. He prayed in solitude, surrendered completely, and in that surrender, heaven moved through him with effortless power. What looked like rest was preparation. What looked like silence was alignment. Modern science now confirms what the ancients already knew. The mind does not shut down in sleep. It restores, reorganizes, and heals. During deep rest, the brain moves into theta waves, the same frequency reached in deep meditation, the same stillness mystics have called revelation. Jesus entered that state not by accident, but by intention. He allowed his human mind to quiet so that divine power could flow unblocked. Think of the woman with the issue of blood. 12 years she suffered, 12 years of shame, isolation, and exhaustion. She had spent everything on doctors and remedies, but nothing worked. Then one morning, she heard Jesus was passing through her town. She didn't know that the night before, while she wrestled with despair, he had already been in the presence of the Father, already entered the realm where healing begins. By dawn, he carried heaven's stillness within him. When she reached out and touched the hem of his garment, she wasn't just touching cloth. She was touching a man who had become a living channel of divine alignment. Power flowed through him without effort, as naturally as breath. "Who touched me?" he asked, not because he didn't know, but because in that moment, healing had simply responded to faith. That is the mystery most forget. Miracles aren't born from striving, but from surrender. Jesus' strength wasn't in constant motion, but in sacred rest, the kind that trusts completely, that releases control, that allows heaven to heal the soul first, so that through the soul, the world might also be healed. The same stars that watched over him still watch over you. The same silence he entered still waits for you each night. Maybe the miracle you're praying for doesn't begin with doing more, but with resting deeper. Because every true healing, every real miracle, still begins the same way it did for him, in silence, in surrender, and in the dark. The body sleeps, but the soul continues the work of God. That's why, when the woman touched the hem of Jesus' garment, she wasn't just touching fabric. She was touching a man who had become a living threshold, someone so aligned with the Father that power flowed through him without effort. "Who touched me?" he asked, not in confusion but in recognition, because healing isn't something you do, it's something you become. And that kind of alignment is not built in noise or striving, but in rest, in the sacred surrender of the night. The same pattern unfolded before he called Lazarus from the tomb. Lazarus had been dead 4 days, his sisters drowning in grief, the mourners certain that all hope was gone. Yet before Jesus even arrived in Bethany, before he stood at that tomb and spoke the words, "Lazarus, come forth," he had already entered the realm where death has no dominion. In the stillness of the night, in that space between human consciousness and divine awareness, he had already walked in the dimension where life and death are not opposites, but frequencies under the authority of God. He wasn't merely resting, he was preparing the way. Have you ever woken up with clarity about something that had tormented you the day before? Have you ever had a dream so vivid it felt like memory, or woken to find pain and fear somehow dissolved overnight? You've touched that same realm. Only for most, it happens by accident. Jesus entered it deliberately. He had practiced the art of sacred rest, mastering the mystery of stillness where heaven's work begins. And the most astonishing truth is this: he said you could enter it too. "Greater works than these shall you do," he promised, not because you're extraordinary, but because the same spirit that rested in him now rests in you. The same consciousness that healed through him breathes through your very being. The same doorway he crossed each night still waits for you, every time you close your eyes. Each night, you perform a miracle without realizing it. You release your body to sleep. You let go of thought, of identity, of control. For a few hours, you stop being your story. That surrender, the quiet falling away of self, is the purest prayer that exists. It isn't the prayer of words or ritual. It's the prayer of trust. When Jesus said, "Come to me, all who are weary, and I will give you rest," he wasn't offering a nap. He was inviting you into the same rest that heals the soul, the rest that opens heaven. In Greek, the word he used for rest means not just to cease from labor, but to be restored, to be renewed from the inside out. This is why Jesus often used rest as a symbol for the kingdom itself. Because when you sleep, your striving stops. The mind that plans, fears, and judges finally steps aside. The ego dissolves, the masks fall, and what remains is simple awareness, pure being. That, he said, is the kingdom of God, not a place you go someday, but a state of communion you can enter every single night if you approach it with reverence. The early Christians, the desert fathers and mothers, understood this. They treated night as sacred, the hour of silence when the soul meets God without words. Jesus himself practiced it nightly. Before each miracle, he laid down his human will and prayed, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit," not only on the cross, but every evening. In that surrender, his human and divine awareness became one. Most people miss this mystery, that every night, the same doorway opens for you. Sleep is not the absence of consciousness, it's the return to it. In those moments before you drift off, when your body feels heavy and your mind softens, you stand at the threshold of the kingdom. The difference is whether you cross it unconsciously or deliberately. So tonight, when you close your eyes, remember, this is not collapse, it's communion. You're not falling asleep, you're returning to the heart of God. In that surrender, healing begins. Not because you force it, but because heaven finally has room to move. Before Jesus closed his eyes each night, he did something few people ever consider. He cleared the field of his heart. The realm you enter in sleep isn't separate from the consciousness you live in during the day. It's a continuation, a deepening. Whatever you carry across that threshold shapes your night. If you fall asleep in fear, you dream in fear. If you fall asleep angry, that anger seeps into every breath of your rest. But if you fall asleep in peace, trust, and forgiveness, your body receives that frequency for hours, and healing naturally follows. That's why, before darkness fully settled, Jesus practiced release. First, he forgave everyone, every offense, betrayal, and misunderstanding, not because they deserved it, but because he did. Carrying resentment into rest is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to suffer. Forgiveness wasn't for others, it was for freedom. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you, he said. If you do not bring it forth, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. Forgiveness is the way you bring forth light. It isn't a moral task. It's the act of releasing what doesn't belong in the presence of God. So before you sleep tonight, pause. Remember the faces of those who hurt you today, those who dismissed or misunderstood you. Whisper it aloud or silently. I forgive you. I release you. You have no power over my peace. Feel the weight lift. That release isn't weakness, it's healing. Unforgiveness binds you, not them. Jesus knew this, and he practiced forgiveness not once, but every night, as a cleansing of the soul before entering sacred rest. Second, he released control. This may be the hardest practice of all because control is the language of fear. Humans grasp for certainty, clutching plans and outcomes as if anxiety could keep the world safe. But Jesus prayed differently. His words were simple, steady. Your will be done. Not mine, not my timeline, not my understanding, yours. This isn't passive surrender, it's divine trust. Because when you stop trying to control everything, you open space for grace to move. So tonight, take a deep breath. Hold it. And as you exhale, say, I release my need to control. I trust the process. I surrender to what God is forming in me. Feel your body soften. That softness is alignment, not defeat. Then, he turned inward and remembered the light. I am the light of the world. He said, not I have light or I reflect light, but I am. And so are you. As he lay in the quiet dark, he remembered this truth until it filled every cell. Try it. Imagine a golden light rising from your heart, warm, calm, alive. With each breath, let it expand through your chest, your arms, your mind, until your whole being glows softly. Whisper, I am light. I am whole. I am loved. You're not inventing something new. You're remembering what's always been true. When you rest in that awareness, your body receives it as instruction. The cells listen. The nervous system calms. The mind realigns with truth instead of fear. Finally, as sleep approached, he prayed, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit, not as a plea, but as a declaration of trust. Those words carried him through every night and, ultimately, through the cross. And in that surrender, heaven and earth met within him. The body, without effort or striving, simply remembered how to be whole. Because here is the secret law of creation. Consciousness precedes form. Your body is not a machine that generates thought. It's the physical reflection of the state you live in. Every cell listens, not to your words, but to your state of being. When you sleep in fear, your body hears, we are unsafe. It braces for threat, inflammation rises, healing halts. But when you sleep in peace, in trust, in the awareness of love, your body hears, we are safe. We are whole. We are loved. And it heals, not because you earned it, but because that's what bodies do when consciousness aligns with truth. This is what Jesus understood. His miracles weren't born from striving, but from the stillness he built each night, through forgiveness, surrender, remembrance, and rest. The same stillness waits for you tonight. Jesus understood that the body obeys consciousness. Miracles, he knew, are not violations of natural law. They are expressions of a higher law that most people never touch. When he said to the paralyzed man, rise, take up your bed, and walk, he wasn't commanding muscles. He was awakening the man's awareness. He spoke to the level of consciousness that governs the body, the level most people reach only in deep sleep, in prayer, or in absolute surrender. The man rose, not because Jesus used magic, but because Jesus had mastered alignment with the Father. Every night, he strengthened that alignment. He fell asleep in the consciousness of the kingdom, not in fear, not in doubt, but in oneness. He knew that the Father and he were not two beings, but one stream of divine awareness expressing itself through human form. When you sleep in that same awareness, your body naturally heals. Science now affirms what the ancients already sensed. During deep rest, the body repairs itself, clears toxins, regenerates cells, and restores balance. Yet the quality of that healing depends on the consciousness you bring into sleep. Fall asleep in fear, and your body stays alert, flooded with stress hormones. But rest in peace and trust, and your nervous system shifts into harmony. Your cells receive the signal that it's safe to heal. That's why Jesus' miracles appeared effortless. He wasn't trying to control reality. He was letting divine order express itself through him. Night after night, while the world slept, he was communing with the realm where healing begins. There's a moment in Mark's gospel that reveals this secret. A violent storm strikes the Sea of Galilee. The disciples panic as waves crash over their boat. And where is Jesus? Asleep, utterly calm in the stern while chaos surrounds him. They wake him in terror. Teacher, don't you care that we're perishing? He rises, still half in that sacred state between sleeping and waking, and speaks to the wind as if to a frightened child. Peace. Be still. Instantly, the sea falls silent. The disciples, more afraid of his peace than of the storm, whisper, Who is this man? that even the wind and sea obey him. But Jesus wasn't controlling the storm. He was simply abiding in a consciousness where storms hold no power. He carried the stillness of the kingdom from his sleep into his waking life. The world reorganized itself around his alignment. This is the mystery few understand. Your outer world, your health, even the elements respond to consciousness. The state you fall asleep in becomes the foundation for what you wake into. So what state are you carrying into the night? Fear, distraction, and anxiety, or peace, surrender, and trust? Because every night, you enter the same field Jesus called the kingdom, the field where healing, order, and divine flow are natural. And here's the astonishing truth. Every dream you've ever had is God speaking in the language of your soul. Scripture is filled with this pattern. Abraham, Joseph, Daniel, Mary, all received revelation in dreams. Jesus, raised in that sacred tradition, understood that the realm of sleep is not less real than waking life. It's more real, because there the soul meets its source without filters. He learned to remain awake in that realm, to walk consciously in the space most visit only in dreams. Mystics call it wakefulness in sleep, the state where thought becomes creation and word becomes reality. That was the secret of his miracles. Jesus lived from the dream consciousness, the place where heaven and earth are already one, where the boundary between creator and creation disappears entirely. Jesus spoke the same creative language that formed the universe. When he said, "Let there be light," to a blind man's eyes, he wasn't uttering poetry. He was speaking in the tongue of pure consciousness, the same divine vibration that first called stars into being. He could do this because he had learned to stay awake within the realm where that language is spoken, the space where heaven and earth merge. Think about your dreams. In them, you can fly, walk through walls, speak to the departed, and heal instantly. Time bends. Space folds. Logic fades. These aren't illusions. They are glimpses of a dimension ruled by higher laws, the laws of consciousness itself. Jesus learned to bring that realm into his waking life. He learned to dream while awake, to live from the level of awareness where "thy will be done" is not a request, but a description of how reality moves when the soul stops resisting. This is what he meant when he said, "The kingdom of heaven is at hand," not distant, not someday, but here, within reach, as close as your next breath, as near as your next sleep. The same light that he touched each night in communion with the Father is alive within you now. Not symbolically, literally. The same consciousness that moved through him, that healed through him, that spoke galaxies into existence is the very awareness reading these words. You are not separate from it. You never were. The belief that you are separate, the illusion of distance between God and you, is the only veil that blocks that truth. Yet every night, when you surrender to sleep, that veil dissolves. For a few sacred hours, you remember what you've always been, pure, undivided, whole. In that remembrance, the body begins to heal, not through effort, but through stillness. When you stop trying to earn love, stop striving to prove worthiness, and simply rest in your true nature, the divine within you begins to move again. The same Christ consciousness that animated Jesus stirs within you, restoring what was forgotten, awakening what was dormant. This is why he said, "You will do greater works than these." Not because we surpass him, but because he came to show us what we already are, living temples, human vessels of divine awareness, dreamers learning to awaken inside the dream of life. Each night is a training ground for that remembrance. In the sacred dark, in the quiet between who you think you are and who you truly are, heaven whispers. If your spirit stirs as you read this, if something ancient inside you feels familiar, it's because you're remembering. And when one soul remembers, it ripples outward. The kingdom spreads not through force or persuasion, but through resonance, soul to soul, heart to heart, dreamer to dreamer, until the world remembers what the night is for. But there's one more revelation, the deepest one. It isn't about what Jesus did in sleep. It's about who still walks within it. Even now, tonight, that same presence waits beside you. The spirit that healed the sick, raised the dead, and calmed the seas has never left. It hasn't ascended to a distant throne. It abides here, within you. The true gospel was never about worshiping him. It was about becoming like him. Christ in you, the hope of glory, Paul wrote. Not Christ above or beyond, but Christ in you, the divine awareness that was never gone, only forgotten. So when you close your eyes tonight, remember this. You're not merely going to sleep. You're approaching the temple. The same sanctuary Jesus entered every night still opens for you. There, in the silence between waking and dreaming, heaven meets earth again. The same voice that spoke to him speaks to you. The same love that held him holds you. And in that sacred stillness, something ancient will awaken. The memory of who you truly are. Not broken, not separate, but whole, divine. A beloved child of God rediscovering the light within. The core message of this passage is that true miracles begin in sacred rest, when we learn to surrender, forgive, and reconnect with the presence of God. Jesus didn't perform miracles through effort or force, but through perfect alignment between his human will and the will of the Father, a harmony cultivated every night in prayer and stillness. In daily life, this teaching can be deeply practical. Each evening before sleep, take a few quiet minutes to forgive, release control, and entrust your worries to God. Don't carry anger, fear, or anxiety into the night. An unrest soul cannot bring peace to the body. Instead, whisper a simple prayer. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. That moment of surrender is where healing begins, not through striving, but through trust. When we learn to rest in faith, we invite divine order back into our lives. Our bodies heal, our thoughts calm, and our hearts open to grace. The lesson is simple yet profound. The greatest miracles aren't always external signs, but the quiet transformation of a heart that finally lets go and allows God to move. Peace is the first miracle, and it begins in the dark. The access your soul has longed for all your life has been here all along, waiting in the dark, in rest, in surrender. Every night, without realizing it, you step into something holy. So tonight, not tomorrow or someday, I want you to speak these words aloud, from your heart, from the deepest place that still remembers the truth. I am not separate from the divine. The same spirit that healed through Jesus heals through me. Tonight, I enter sacred rest. I release all fear. I forgive all debts. I surrender all control. And I trust that in my sleep, heaven is doing the work I cannot do through striving. Father, into your hands I rest my spirit. I am whole. I am loved. I am awake in the dream of God. Say it. Feel it. Let it rewrite something inside you. This isn't just a prayer. It's an activation, a remembering of what religion and fear once made you forget. You were never lost. You only forgot who you were. Every night is a chance to practice that remembrance, to lay down the burden of separation, to rest in the truth that your divine nature has never left you. Healing doesn't come from effort. It comes from trust. This is what Jesus knew, what he practiced, what he invited you into, the quiet miracle of surrender. You've been told that miracles happen in daylight, that healing requires faith, rules, and worthiness. But the truth is more radical. Real miracles begin in the dark. They happen in holy rest, when you finally release all control and allow God to remind you of what you've always known. And when you close your eyes tonight, you won't be alone. The Christ within you, the divine consciousness that never left, will be there, not as something distant or separate, but as the deepest truth of who you are, the light that never goes out, the love that never fails, the healing that never stops. Even when you doubt, even when you think you're too broken or ordinary, the Christ within you still remembers. Every night in sacred rest, that memory grows stronger, until one morning you awaken and realize you were never the one merely being healed. You were the vessel through which healing flows. You were never just receiving miracles. You are the miracle. You were never searching for God. God has been expressing himself through you. This is the final revelation, not to worship him, but to become like him, to remember the true self, the self that never sleeps, never dies, the divine essence that moves through all things, heals all things, and loves without end. Tonight, as you rest, practice being that self. Let go of the false identity. Trust the process. Enter sacred surrender. And somewhere in the deep night, heaven will touch earth again. Spirit will touch flesh. And you will remember, if only for a moment, what you came here to be. If these words awaken something in you, let that remembrance ripple outward, like this message as a sign of awakening. Subscribe as a vow to live in that light, and write 3 simple words: I am waking up, because you are, and the whole world will feel it. Tonight, may your rest be holy, your dreams filled with his voice, and your soul finally at peace.